Right, hello and welcome back to the Cineskinny. It is the final Cineskinny podcast of 2024 and we've all decamped to a rather corporate meeting room, but that Jamie has done something nice with the lighting, so it does actually look alright. So it's me, Ellie Robertson, Jamie Dunn and Anahit. Everyone say hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Jamie and Anahit are sharing a microphone.
I get my own one.
Ellie's got their own microphone. They've got the light of the late afternoon sun. It's a great time. And I am trying to speak directly into this thing that's perched on a stand that doesn't fit it. The year ends as it has been throughout. Light shambles, but we'll be fine. So, last time we did a episode on the 10 best films of the year. I believe it was called The Films of 2024. You understand the concept. You all listened to it. It was great fun. So this time, we're going to do more of a kind of retrospective of the year with some of the films that didn't get as much shine as they should have, some films that had interesting things in them but probably didn't warrant being fully in the top 10. I'm going to talk about Lindsay Lohan at one point. It's going to be a fun time for everybody. We will start by talking, as we love to do, about the underrated films of 2024. As we discovered on the last podcast, people loved those good films. Your Lacrimeras, your Challengers, your Zones of Interest, and so on and so forth. But what were the films that didn't charm everyone, but did charm enough people to be worthy of attention in this, our roundup of 2024 episode of this podcast that we're all on and has been going for 2 or 3 minutes? Shall I come to you first, Ellie, to talk about your contender for the snappily titled The People Slept on This Film Award?
Yeah, so I nominated Timestalker. I was just sort of racking my brain thinking, because I wish I could have said like Red Rooms or something like that, because it was such a surprise. It was such a genuine, like, going in with low expectations and being really, like, blown away by it. But the thing is, like, that's sort of the top of everybody's list of underrated films. So I'm looking for an underrated film. So I feel like Timestalker...
The connoisseur's choice.
Exactly, yeah. Your favourite underrated film. Which I don't know if this is.
The Chappelle Rowan of underrated cinema.
Which honestly is not that far from a decent description of Timestalker, because it's very like baroque, very camp, quite funny, quite silly, quite sexy, quite gay. Maybe it's just that kind of that whole Garth Marenghi Dark Place cast that we kind of see in it. Maybe that's like their time has passed or something like that. But I just feel like it didn't get really as much watch as it should have. I know that like some people saw it and didn't like it, but I do think that it probably would have done well if it had just reached a few more people. Again, I went in with like no expectations and was just sort of pleased by the really like imaginative filmmaking on display.
Now, what we have to ask in a question around people sleeping on a film is it the fault of the distributors or is it the fault of the people themselves? Because I think this film had like a reasonable push behind it and it was on at festivals and things like that. But at the same time, I know what you mean, that like sometimes these things just don't sometimes films don't have the zip that you want because they just get buried under a pile of other things.
Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to say, I obviously don't think it's a bad film. I really enjoyed it, but like, yeah, like I say, I don't know what it is that's kind of got it lacking a little bit. I don't know if it's just that like there's nobody particularly relevant in it, like there's no like big star appeal, even though, I mean, you know, people know Richard Ayoade and I think that Jacob Anderson's had a good year and they both show up in it. But yeah, I can't explain it. Like, there's so much cool little like costume design, particularly with the iconic like wig that makes its way into the poster. And, you know, it's a sort of fun sort of time loop, sort of time skip film, which also feels very relevant. So I can't explain exactly why this just didn't get seen as much.
Sorry, I need to cough. Sorry, we'll hold that in for 5 minutes.
Jamie needs to cough, and unfortunately, Ellie, the AI summary for the phrase Timestalker Ayoade simply says Richard Ayoade is not associated with the 2024 film Timestalker. But tell you what, if it had more Ayoade, the people would have appreciated it more.
Yeah.
So really, we can blame Richard Ayoade for that one. Jamie, what have you got in the more... So yes, Timestalker is very good. You should go and watch it. And I think it is on streaming shortly, or right now I will check, while Jamie tells us what film people slept on from his perspective. This is going very well so far.
I'm going to nominate... I don't quite know why it was slept on. It was like Koreeda's film Monster. It's my film of the year, and it didn't really appear.
Did that come out this year?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, back in March.
Actually, this isn't a prank or anything.
Yeah, it was
Fucking hell.
Yeah, it's been a long year. But yeah, like, I think part of the reason why not enough people saw it was it's quite a difficult film to tell people about. You know, I didn't actually review this, but I think if I did review it, it'd be quite hard to like summarize what it's about, because the pleasure of the film is the surprises. It's like told from 3 different perspectives, and to like tell people exactly how the 3 perspectives kind of play out would sort of ruin the film in a way. So like, and even to explain it's a queer film might ruin the film in a way. So like, there's you can really market it like that. So it's like it was a quite hard one to market. Also, I think Koreeda's having a kind of tough time because like, as much as he's like one of these kind of like adored filmmakers, his last few films I feel have been a bit underrated. I don't know what's going on, but like since winning the Palme d'Or for Shoplifters, his subsequent films just haven't sort of caught fire. And I don't know why, because this is, I think, among the best things he's ever done. So disappointed that not more people saw it. I would love to talk to people about it, but I guess it's also kind of nice that it wasn't sort of hyped up, because actually one of the biggest pleasures for me of the year was going to see this without much hype and just being kind of surprised by how great it was, like going in with low expectations and sort of being absolutely blown away. So a film, it's kind of, I actually kind of like sometimes having a film that sort of seems to be my own. Like sometimes like it's kind of nice to have your own sort of, like, I kind of hate when I'm making my top 10 list and it's the same as everybody else's, you know? Like, it's nice to... you don't want to be a contrarian, but you also you don't want to be basic. No, you know what I mean? You don't want to feel basic by just saying my favourite film is the same as everyone else's. So, like, my favourite film was Monster. I feel like if more people saw it, it would have been their favourite film, but I kind of like the fact that it's kind of mine for now until it's rediscovered. So, I think that's kind of cool.
I got Monster confused with Broco, so that's why I had a minor existential crisis. Timestalker you can rent, and Monsters on the BFI player. Anahit, what have you got?
I also probably would vote for Monster. I thought it was fucking amazing. It was also, I'm a special little girl, and it was also in my top 10, I think like 5 or 6. And I assumed that it would be in everyone's, and it was kind of shocking to me that it wasn't. I thought it was so beautiful, so deeply like moving and like sad and not sad. I don't know. I fucking loved it. So yeah, Monster for sure. And then the other thing that I was surprised that didn't get more of a, but then also maybe not that surprising, was Steve McQueen's Occupied City, which actually maybe is not that surprising because it's a 4.5-hour documentary on the Holocaust. So maybe some mysteries solve themselves.
Yeah, the thing about people is they never cease to find new ways to let you down.
Yeah. But I thought it was really remarkable. I would say one of the best things that he has made. I have not seen Blitz, but I feel that statement will still stand.
Yeah, you shooting your shot now for Steve McQueen Film of the Year. We'll get that sub award in while we're at it.
But yeah, I thought it was just a really remarkable piece of filmmaking that not only deals with its subject matter in a really considered and original way, but also does something really interesting with the idea of film and durational film and time, and that sense of just like sitting with something and being immersed in something and almost like losing a sense of time, but also your attention being something that is like a relationship that you have with the film. Like it deals with all of these ideas in a really, really interesting way. I saw it at London last year, so like last October, and I think I went into it being like, oh, I could, because there's an intermission halfway through, I think. And I was like, I could just leave it at intermission because it is just like a series of vignettes. There is no real like plot that drives it forward. But and you know, I love a short film. Like I am not like a long film girly, but there was something really mesmerizing about it. And also something that felt like, yeah, like an act of bearing witness, I suppose, in an actual meaningful way and not just in a like passive way, but that you were like, yeah, giving your time. And I really, really loved it. It has like a beautiful score by Oliver Coates, who famously did the score for Aftersun. It's just like a really gorgeously made piece of art. I thought it was beautiful.
Excellent. Well, Occupied City is on Mubi, so you can watch it. It's 4 hours and 11 minutes long.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
But Christmas holidays are coming up, so
escape your family.
Escape your family for the best Steve McQueen film of 2024 TM. Okay, so that's films that people slept on. But what about films that we preemptively slept on and then woke up from in the middle of the film? This is Films That Truly Surprised Us, the aptly titled The Film That Truly Surprised Me award. Now, I know what Evan's going to talk about. I'm trying to work out the best way to do this. Ellie spoke about something that didn't count as a film that people had slept on because people actually really liked it. So maybe we'll go to Jamie first to talk about Red Rooms, I believe. This looks like this has got your handwriting on it.
Yes.
Excellent.
This is me. Well, I mean, we talked about this in the podcast. But yeah, I just had a blast watching this for the podcast. I mean, it's a film that I don't think I would have watched if it wasn't for the podcast. I think the reason we reviewed it, if I remember rightly, is it came out in that kind of weird period in September, just like when Venice and TIFF is on, and like there's actually not that many art house films. So it's a weird kind of time. And I remember kind of trying to commission films around about that time, and like Red Rooms just sort of fell into my commissioning kind of slot. Didn't really know much about it. Yeah, it was just a fantastic movie. Like I think it had just such a kind of chilly, strange tone, you know, that felt really original. It kind of takes the serial killer genre, but kind of turns on its head and does something really interesting and ambiguous with it that I've never seen before. It's got this lead performance from Juliet Garapi, I think her name is, that's so unusual, so unreadable. Like, it's kind of like bland and blank, but also deadpan, which makes her kind of scary, but also funny. It's like, it's really hard to explain what she's doing in the film, but she does it so well. And then the director, Pascal Plant, I'm really excited to see what they do next. They're French-Canadian. I think this is their second film, and like really kind of an interesting point of view, really kind of like interesting filmmaker, and is doing a lot with like not a big budget, you know, like makes a really kind of creative stab at this genre. It's also like a kind of a courtroom drama as well. It's like it's doing a lot of things and doing it all in a quite an unusual, interesting way that kind of really startled me.
It's proof that films, much like books, can't be judged solely on their cover, brackets, 2-line synopsis. Because it's got a very specific feel to it, a very specific vibe to it. It's not a cheery Christmas film, but if you haven't seen it, you should watch it over the Christmas break. That would be my advice to you, listener, on this film podcast where we talk about films that you should watch. You should also watch this one that we've just talked about. Right, I'm going to come to you next, Ellie, with a setup. You can take this ball that's in the air and whack it, right?
I'm not good at
Animated film trailers have a habit of making you want to strike everyone who was involved in the trailer and the film quite hard. But The Wild Robot had a trailer that was very, very different from a lot of other animated films, and I gather the rest of the film follows a similar vibe.
Yeah. Is that a good enough whack for you?
and it's out of there.
It's not to say that this film like truly surprised me, because I didn't think it was going to be terrible, but I was just sort of like, you know, I think that in general, it's been quite a quiet year for animated films. There's been no Spider-Verses. There's been no like crazy sort of like mind-blowing experimental art house animated films.
No one will send me a screener of the new Wallace and Gromit.
No, have
Tragic.
you asked?
No.
Okay.
Like, that's the thing. There's actually like loads of animated films still to come, right? But The Wild Robot, like, I kind of was just like, sure, this is yet another DreamWorks film, and they're kind of on like a bit of a good kick. They've had some good stuff, but it's still very like sort of mainstream, and it's the chance that it might be, I don't know, falling into the same step as like Disney, who are really struggling to keep the audience's attention. And when I started The Wild Robot, I sort of started rolling my eyes, because here we have an animated film where a robot is in nature and surrounded by nature, and oh, but would you believe it? You actually realize that the robot starts to care for the animals start to care for the robot. And it's really felt like something we'd done before, and in particular in animated films with like WALL-E. It has big WALL-E vibes. But I guess the big sort of surprise with The Wild Robot is that unlike WALL-E, where they just use the animation to kind of help convey his emotions instead of giving him any lines, the animated robot in question is, I think it's Rosum is the name of the robot, doesn't have a moving face at all. So it actually is an incredibly robotic performance visually, in that it's kind of like constrained without being able to express itself. But it's voiced by Lupita Nyong'o, and Lupita Nyong'o did like loads of work into like very gradually adjusting the voice throughout the performance of the film, so that you actually believed that this robot was like breaking its programming or something like that. And it's just really cool, and like I was sort of swept up in that performance way more than I expected to be. And around the board, I think Pedro Pascal is also in this film. Yeah, Pedro Pascal is also in this film. Catherine O'Hara, Bill Nye, lots of like really good voice actors, and I think that's sort of what brings it together. So though I think on the surface it just seems like a conventional animated family film about a robot in nature, you do wind up like, there's a lot of like really hard-working performers on this, and it kind of shows. I think it winds up doing quite a good job. Excellent.
I love animated films, so I will watch The Wild Robot at some point over the Christmas break.
It's a perfect Christmas film, yeah.
Excellent. I'll get Wallace and Gromit in first, and then we'll work backwards from that. Anahit, what did you want to talk about in films that really surprised you this year?
yeah, really surprised it's doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Right. What should we say? Slightly surprised?
Time.
You had a nice time? Yeah.
I had a
Okay,
nice
cool.
time.
Anahit, tell me about a nice time that you had brackets film.
Okay. I really loved, I think I talked about this in what we've been watching at one point. I loved that crazy Lego Pharrell documentary, piece by piece, which looks like it should be fucking terrible. It really, really does. But there is such absolute fucking joy at seeing like the music video of, was it It's Getting Hot in Here? Or one of them just done in Lego with all these like little girlies in their bikinis. But they're little Lego girlies. I thought it was so funny. I thought Snoop Dogg like fake smoking and getting high with Lego was like really funny. And it just like did really clever things with like, I like films that impose like a constraint on themselves or a limit on themselves, especially when that's like a mismatch in like tone or in like how explicit you can be, I guess. And then they work around that and it works really, really well. And I think that idea of, yeah, like creating art and like Lego being like a kind of form of creation, but then also it's just like really fucking stupid. I know, I had a great time. I thought it was really, I actually genuinely think you guys would like it. I don't think this is one of the things that I'm just like being crazy about. I thought it was great.
I mean, when you're like, I thought this by all rights, this Pharrell Williams Lego documentary should be dog shit. But actually, it's kind of all right.
It was really pretty good. I think you guys would really like it. But I think also what was very surprising to me was how much he was involved in music that I didn't know about.
Oh, this was when you found out who the Neptunes were,
yeah. Huge
oh,
moment.
Glorious days.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Piece by Piece and The Wild Robot are still actually in the cinema.
Oh.
Well, I mean, The Wild Robot certainly is.
You guys could go on the big screen as it was intended.
And Red Rooms is on the BFI player. So, I mean, I don't want to... I mean, obviously, the BFI is a very important institution and such, but if you could get a free trial over Christmas and watch the few films that we've mentioned so far that are on the BFI player and then not give them any money, that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. For you. It would be quite bad for them. I'm going to move on. Let's talk about people who've let us down this year. The films that truly disappointed us. We came to them with our hearts open and full of joy and wonder. And what did they do, Ellie Robertson? When they came to me on the day of my Glasgow Film Festival press screening, watching in the house, they had a film that was described as like a bit John Wickish thriller with some shouty gun blam blam time, but the protagonist was an older woman, and you thought, sounds great. Then what happened?
There's not that much blam blam. There's not that much
insufficient blam blam. Tell them all about the G.
John Wick. Like, I think this is the like kind of what irks me about this film, because it's like it's not even that there's this sort of build up where the institutional systemic elder abuse that we're shown is so sort of sinister and sensationalized. You're watching it thinking only, oh, it'll be great when someone charges through all this and like, I don't know, John Wicks them all up, but. Obviously, that sort of like doesn't happen. The film takes like a much more sort of subdued route. Did you say the name of the film?
I did. I said it's, but the problem is it's called The G.
The G,
so
yeah.
It sounds like the kind of thing I would say on the podcast when I didn't want to say like the actual name of the film. I was just trying to have some fun with it. But
it is called The G.
Legitimately called The G.
And if you try and Google it, you just get shown the Guardian's website. So, I mean, but yeah, like it's not only that it kind of like lacks as sensationalist a satisfaction as it does a build-up, it's that it does kind of leave you wishing there was more like shooty, kabloomy, explodey stuff, and that makes you feel like an 11-year-old. Like, I hate that my criticism of this film is that there wasn't enough just like, madcap violence and running around like smashing people's head in with car doors and stuff.
On not nearly enough occasions did they pick up the boom. 2 stars. I know exactly what you mean, and I think this kind of sounds similar in a way to the one that Jamie wanted to talk about, which was a film that was pitched to us as a folk horror that was folky in the sense that they were wearing jumpers and horror citation needed. This was Starvaker, wasn't it?
Yes. We did slag it off quite a bit on the show, so I don't want to go into too much. I've got a theory, though, that like I feel like sometimes British film can be quite bad at serving really talented first-time directors and not giving them like good opportunities the second time around. So this is Daniel Cockatellos. I think that's how you say him. Apologies, Daniel, if I got it wrong. His second film, he made the film Apostasy. The first time it was a much more personal film. Really amazing, actually. It's about him growing up, Jehovah's Witness. It's kind of based in that kind of world, and it's about a young girl who's sort of communing with God, or thinks she is. Really personal, really fascinating film, really beautifully made. This just feels like a knockoff of 20 other films and just doing it badly. And I don't know. I just feel like it's a shame that whoever is funding him didn't steer him. It's probably BFI actually, just after. Maybe we don't support this with BFI. Anyway, I think sometimes second directors making their sophomore film need a bit more guidance. Sometimes, like, you know, when you make your first film, it's usually very personal. It's going to be great, and then sometimes you need a steer. And I feel he got quite a bad steer here. He's making a film that I don't think he knows quite what he wants to make. It's a film that sort of seems to copy a lot of movies but doesn't quite have its own kind of personality. And that's a shame because there's lots of good things about it. It looks great, it sounds great, it's like the production design is fantastic. But yeah, it wasn't there at the script level, I don't think, and then it never appears or never comes together in the movie.
Yeah, a lot of faffing about, I would say, to not much end. And that's just me being like, I'm sorry, Daniel. Sorry for potentially mispronouncing your name, and sorry for the line. A lot of faffing about to not much end. So those are two kind of smaller films, but Anahit's decided to try and sink one of the biggest fish of the year with a film that she was disappointed by.
Yeah, June 2 sucked.
Oh.
Like, are we all on board with that? I've seen a couple of like top 10 lists where it's in the top 10 list.
I think maybe June 2 is towards the bottom of my top 10.
Oh my God, you're crazy.
What can I say? I am a lover of mainstream cinema.
You are a white boy, my friend.
Well, I mean, yeah. You know what? You got me.
Yeah,
However, did you find out?
I did not love it, and I really, really liked the first one. I thought from a filmmaking perspective, it was very boring in that it copied a lot of what the first film did, but in a really exaggerated way, where it was just a lot of voiceovers and shots of people dramatically walking through the desert, and then like large bits of talking, but there wasn't really any kind of propulsive action. When I think of the first film, I think of these like big set pieces that feel like so monumental. And this one, it was just a lot of very long political conversations and then someone in silhouette with like dust swirling, like sand swirling around them, like walking away, and someone saying something mystical and stupid in voiceover, which I did not like. I thought it was truly one of the worst like plunderings of Middle Eastern culture I've ever seen in my life.
It's a fair cop.
Yeah.
And like the first one had that like a little bit, and that was a criticism of it. But to me, the second one, like there were just bits of it that were crazy. Rebecca Ferguson is like just such a white woman, and to see her in these kind of clothes and with these like tattoo markings that are taken from like Bedouin tribes, from all of this kind of like culture and history, like not even in a way that I found it offensive, I just found it silly. Like I just could not take it seriously. I thought it was so stupid. There's something so funny about calling, was it Christopher Walken, the Padishah Emperor? That to me is fucking hilarious. And so there were like all of these things about it that I was like, I can't, like let's be serious for a second.
You mean to tell me that Javier Bardem being
everyone's favorite Middle Eastern uncle, the man from Spain, utter nonsense, like really in brown face, like really, really. He had so much fake tan on.
His best hope in the inevitable show trial is to say it was the color grade.
It was crazy. So yeah, I did not love it, was incredibly disappointed by it, because I actually really did love the first one. And I think to a certain extent, maybe the second half of that book is a bit unadaptable. But I think also you could have done something a lot more interesting than just like not have read Edward Said's Orientalism, I think, personally. If it were up to me.
If he had read too much Edward Said, it would have eaten into all of his big worm chase planning.
And then where would we be?
That's what the boys want. Men only want one thing, and it's disgusting. And what is it? It's Timothy Chalamet riding around on the back of a giant worm.
But then he only does that really like one time, and it's not that interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
You're right. And the fact that the worm is so big then just means like, well, he's really on that worm.
One thing really annoyed me, can I?
Yes.
One thing really annoyed me. How do you get off the worm? They never show you. They just like, it's like...
I think they jump.
Yeah, but how? Like they had like they had loads of stuff on there. How do they get all that down? I want to see, how do you unload a worm? You know, and you've got like it's tricky. Exactly.
Yes, directors, consider yourselves on blast. Okay, so we've talked about films that surprised us, brackets good and bad. Now it's time to ask a big question. Why did filmmakers go so hard in 2024? So the top 10 that we discussed in the last episode was full of directors taking big swings and hitting them out of the park, much like Ellie earlier when Ellie hit that setup about animated films. See, it's all thematic. This is all planned. I want you all to know this. So we're thinking like Rose Glass with Love Lies, Bleed In, Jonathan Glazer doing something incredibly interesting with the Zone of Interest, but there were other directors who took big risks, big swings, and then strike out, or something else that happens bad in baseball, or sometimes cricket. Yes, we're talking about directors taking massive swings and then missing a bit. Who would like to go first on this? The idea that a filmmaker might try something incredibly ambitious and then not do it good.
I can.
Is Jamie about to talk shit about Megalopolis?
Well, actually, I mean, the thing is very subjective, isn't it? Because I was going to say like a couple of films that I felt were really ambitious and took massive swings but didn't quite work for me were The Substance and Amelia Perez. But those are films that are actually quite successful. Like The Substance is like taking loads of money for a small independent film. It's like, I think it got like 60 million or something, so it's like hugely over its budget. And then Amelia Perez is walked out of the Golden Globes with the most nominations, which is kind of crazy.
And the thing about the Golden Globes is I've never known them to make any bad decisions, either in the nominations or in just the running of the awards.
Well, we'll see. I think it's going to have a decent awards run, you know? So like, for as much as it's quite a risible film, and it's I think I like the chutzpah of it. I don't think the execution is great, and I think there is kind of lots of issues thematically and politically about the film. But it's a big swing. It's like that's what's most interesting about it. It's a filmmaker who's never done anything like this, has had the the balls to like go and make a film where he probably shouldn't be making a film, to be honest. He's went to Mexico. He's making a film about trans issues. He has not shown any interest in these subjects before, and I think he does. I think it's quite a open-hearted and sort of quite a sincere attempt to deal with these issues, but it is also a bit silly. And I don't know. I feel like maybe a Mexican filmmaker or a trans filmmaker might have had more interesting things to say overall. So there's things that I like about the film. I like films that are ambitious and, you know, don't just like follow a template, and this film certainly doesn't do that. But it's not particularly good. So yeah, but I feel kind of similar about Substance. I think there's a lot of things I like about it. Like visually, it's like very bold. I love the performances from the two kind of leads in it. Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley. Does the film hold together all the way through? No, but then is that I don't know. I sometimes respect films that kind of like go off and sort of like go a bit crazy. You know, like I think maybe in a few years' time we'll start to appreciate that more. But watching it, I didn't find that enjoyable. This is my feeling about Megalopolis. I missed the Megalopolis chat because I was unwell. But Megalopolis, obviously not good, right? Not a good film. But I think if I was going to be, say, if I was suddenly ended up transported onto a professional football pitch, I don't think simply doing like one or two passes and then getting out would be a good idea. You're trying to score from the halfway line. Like if you ended up playing like professional baseball, you try and hit a home run. No one's going to be happy if you're like, oh yeah, I got a single or I got a walk. No, go big or go home. And that's what Francis Ford Coppola did. He went so big he had to sell part of his home in order to do it. And did it work? God, no. It's a fucking mess. But I just really appreciate it. And I appreciate all the actors as well, who clearly knew what they were in for, which was a film which required them to min-max all of their kind of like exuberance. And it was like full power, capital A acting, but no one was paying any attention to what anyone else was doing. And I appreciated that. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't good, but I did enjoy it. Ellie, do you have any opinions on Megalopolis or another film that would fit in this category?
I mean, yes.
Again, it's all very well planned.
I obviously sort of said what I said about Megalopolis when we were originally covering it, but I feel like the only thing that I have to add on top of it, because you're right, like it sort of has been a success in the sense that everybody thinks it's the funniest film of the year and it's like the most memeable film of the year, and it's like viral in a way that, you know, I don't know, sort of this type of film probably wouldn't be if it wasn't shit. But I would still argue that does fall under Francis Ford Coppola swinging and missing. He was trying, I think...
Oh, no, he was trying to hit a home run. He whiffed it, and the bat went in the air, and his hat came off, his trousers fell down, the whole lot. But still, that's better than someone just doing like a safe swing.
Yeah.
I don't want that.
The only thing that I think that I could add after like having the time having passed since it's come out is I feel a little bit more comfortable talking about the plot specifically and how, I mean, is it a spoiler? Is it not? Is this film even spoilerable? Who cares? The fact that like the point of the film is that it's about a man who is solely devoted to his single cause. Nobody else understands him. Concepts like, you know, the mayor who says you can't transform this city, or the people who live in this city saying you can't transform them, they don't have any political reasoning behind their beliefs. They just don't vibe with him. They don't trust the dream. And it's just so hilarious how he eventually, after all this adversity and all these obstacles, eventually achieves his dream of creating Megalopolis simply because everybody just stops giving a shit and lets him do it. Like, that's, to my mind, like, I'm trying to recount the film in my head. That's what happens, right? Like, all of the problems that are a problem just stop being a problem because the film needs to be over.
Yes, and basically everyone has like exhausted the appeals process.
Yeah.
It's like nobody wants that big block of flats to get built, but they're getting built.
I think
that is, I would say, a grim portent for it's actually an incredibly good social commentary. You know what? Megalopolis is good. Nah, I'm only kidding. Megalopolis sucks. Anahit, do you have anything where you thought that a director made some bad decisions and they should be punished for it by talking about them on this podcast?
Yeah, I don't think they should be punished, but I don't think it was great.
It's the only way they'll learn.
I think it was a big swing. I famously walked out of Megalopolis 20 minutes in, so I can't really comment apart from to be like, I walked out of it.
That's a good review.
Yeah. Like, I think that says it all.
But then you missed the bit where he healed himself with the Megalopolis powder.
Yeah, I think I'm so okay with that. Like, that's so fine by me.
It's such a bad film.
But what I was going to talk about is a film that hasn't come out yet, but I think technically is a 2024 film, because I think it comes out the 27th of this month, which is Asif Kapadia's 2073, which is that half documentary, half sci-fi dystopia about the year 2073 that then looks back at all of the ways that we could have got to this like very grungy Hunger Gamesy dystopia starring Samantha Morton, and largely that's by way of Elon Musk. And so it's kind of taking apart like all of these, I think it like covers it in like 4 different strands, which I saw this at Venice. Like, one is like the surveillance state, one is like techno-capitalism, one is like climate catastrophe. And so it's kind of looking at all of these various dystopias that we're currently living in, and then it'll flash forward and it'll be like, oh, this is how you end up in these horrible sci-fi worlds. Like, we're already creating the conditions of those sci-fi worlds, which is really interesting, I think, but is largely a failure, largely because you feel you're being shouted at for the whole film. It has incredible, that guy, Adam McKay? Is that the one that did like Don't Look Up? It has like very much that kind of energy, which is very chaotic, very brash, a lot of like headlines coming at you really fast and a lot of like shouting. And I found its political argument compelling, but I found the method by which it did that grating. But it swings really big. I think bringing those 2 genres together is really interesting. It just was annoying and unsuccessful.
And those are 2 of the last things you want to be when you're a film director.
Yeah. You want to be not annoying.
You want to be annoying and successful. Or unsuccessful and kind of charming.
Yeah. Maybe both, but let's not dream too big.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like the triangle of like on time, on budget, and to spec. It's like you can be annoying and successful, but then you have to be I don't know. Something else. Anyway, leave that with me when we talk about the next bit. We're going to move on to a brief interlude from talking about art house cinema to not just talk about the fancy films, but we're still going to be slagging people off because we're talking about Hollywood milking sequels that were rubbish. Who wants to talk about a bad sequel? Ellie, do you have any bad sequels you want to talk about from this?
I actually 2024? Don't have. I've been watching like no sequels this year. Like the sequels, even the good sequels that we have listed here, I've like not really been following up with just because I don't really have much of an appetite for it this year. And I have to say that like also there are some good sequels coming up just at the end of the year. Like you've already said, Wallace and Gromit. The Sonic the Hedgehog is probably going to be good, right?
Is Jim Carrey in the 3rd one, or is Robotnik canonically dead?
He's going to be in the 3rd one. The only thing that I really have
What? Right, okay. A brief interlude here. How can Sonic be pals with Dr. Robotnik?
Because they have a mutual enemy in Shadow the Hedgehog, even though I don't think that's what happens in the video games.
No.
But I would assume that's why. That's just good narrative.
I don't know who any of these people are.
You don't know who Shadow the Hedgehog is? He's like the coolest one. He's like Sonic, but
Is
instead
he
of
Jim
blue.
Carrey in the film?
No, he's Keanu Reeves.
Okay.
He's also a hedgehog.
Okay. I see.
Bar that, I've not really been watching any sequels, but I did learn something really, really interesting because I shockingly didn't see the new Joker. I don't really care. I learned it made less money than Morbius, which is so the film they famously like brought back a second time and it flopped twice.
Are you saying it's still mobbing time?
And this led me on so I checked the Wikipedia page and
Stopped
apparently
clock is right twice a day, and that clock is set on mobbing time.
I looked up the new Joker film on Wikipedia, and I learned that there have been 6 films by DC in the last 2 years, and none of them have like broken even. And it's like, oh wow, that's bad. Like, I know that like everyone always says, oh, you know, there's no market for like superhero films, but wow, there's no market for superhero films.
Yeah, it turns out if you consistently make bad films that nobody likes, that is a financially poor track to go down.
Well, you say that. I was going to play a little game. Do you want to play what was the top rating films of the year?
Yeah.
I've got box office mojo open as we speak. Let's see if we can get the top 10. Who thinks they know what was the top 10?
Should we do the top 5? Because the top 10 might take forever.
Well, just okay, not top 5. Name a film that was in the top 5.
Wasn't Inside Out 2 the most grossing, highest grossing?
Yay! We have a prize.
Yeah. Oh my god. Which actually feels crazy that film could be. I feel that hasn't been the case in so long, that there's always been like a bigger blockbuster film that isn't like a Pixar film. So that already feels quite strange. What else came out?
So Inside Out 2 was number 1. Was the Dune on there?
Was the Dune?
The Dune 2.
The Dune was on there. It was number 4. Well done,
Okay.
Peter. You get a biscuit as well.
Yay! What else? This is
What
the
else
thing.
has
We
come out?
we talk a lot about films on our podcast that we do that are quite small and quite niche. And sometimes it's like you get the bends when you try and work out like what is going on in mainstream.
Well, there's one
cinema.
film on here that you definitely went to see. I'm pretty sure.
Well, no, I know, but I'm gonna guess it anyway. Twisters? Is Twisters on there?
Twisters isn't on there, but it did do quite well. Despicable Me 3. No, Despicable Me 4, sorry.
I didn't go and see Despicable Me 4, actually.
You love those films. What are you talking
I
about?
love the Minions. The films are good, but I love those Minions. You know who my favourite Minion is? Everybody say it with me. Otto, the largest Minion.
So the top 5 are all sequels. So it's Inside Out 2, Deadpool.
Mm-hmm.
So people do love superhero films. Deadpool and Wolverine was number 2. Despicable Me 4 was number 3. June 2 was number 4, and Moana 2 was number 5.
So Moana 2 was number 5.
Wow, really? It's been out
June-
like a week.
June 2 was number 4, but Despicable Me 4 was number 3. And then Inside Out 2 was number 1. Just a lot of confusing numbers.
But also,
I'm just trying to obfuscate even more from what's going on.
that's so many children's films. That's
think
crazy.
That's where the money is.
When you think about the fact that, like, I don't know, things that, like, I would have thought, like, Challengers as a film would have done quite well, but most people probably would have seen it streaming at home. And I think that, yeah, it makes sense that, like, family films are probably the ones that will make the most amount of money.
You're not going to take your kids to go and see Challengers.
Yeah.
Unless you got really cool kids.
Unless you need them, you need to get them to work on their backhand.
Anahit, you got any sequels that you want to bag on that maybe didn't make the top 5? There is one film on here that I'm not sure it is a sequel. It is a part of a series.
Is that Madam Web?
You know it's Madam Web.
Yeah, but it still sucked.
Just talk to us briefly about Madam Web, and then we can all move on to something good.
My main experience and memory of Madam Web is our friend Alex talking at us about Madam Web for, honestly, my entire party.
So what
Like,
happened was
potentially?
Alex had like a presentation. It was like a
Like a TED
It
Talk.
was a TED Talk about Madam Web, and he got all the way through it, and then Anna was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, lovely to see you. You just missed Alex's. You're lucky because you just missed Alex's big talk about Madam Web," and he just started it again. I got there for like the second seating, basically, and I had a front row seat for our friend and colleague Alex talking at length about Dakota Johnson as a ambulance paramedic slash daughter of, I believe, some kind of cross between like a spider biologist and a radioactive spider.
Maybe.
Is she part spider? Is that
No, I don't think so. But
she just has the abilities of a spider, in the body of a American woman.
I don't think she has the abilities of a spider. Can't she see the future or something?
Well, the thing is that the web connects them all.
The web connects them all. As Alex told us, her web does connect them all. I actually can't remember anything about this film. I saw it in 4DX. It was terrible.
Did he just like
Alex made me
fling plastic spiders at you?
It's just like I felt like quite emotionally
employee with like a massive cobweb on a stick.
It's like fucking crazy. Like the product placement of that film is wild. I think the whole thing is sponsored by like Pepsi Cola. Like grand finale, like denouement takes place in an abandoned Pepsi Cola factory. But then there are loads of fireworks in the Pepsi Cola factory, and then they all go off. And I think the bad guy is crushed by the letter P, and that's how the film ends. It just wasn't very good.
That is incredible.
But I think it still counts as like a quote unquote sequel in that it's part of like these long form, ongoing, part of a huge fucking franchise. You've known that it's coming for years. You dread it. You want to run from it. You can't, etc. Whatever that quote is.
You can't run. You can't hide. Her web connects them all. How many times do we have to say it? All. Not some. Her web doesn't connect a few of them or a couple. It connects them all.
Anyway,
shall we briefly talk about some sequels that were good?
Yeah, I haven't seen any of these, so I'm going to give... Oh, June 2 is on here. Boo!
Right.
Yeah. I think I put June 2 on here just because I was so disappointed with Gladiator 2, and I realised they're doing kind of similar things. Like, they're about, like, hero worshipping. And, like, June 2, I think it does kind of... I agree it's not as good as the first one, but I think it does explore kind of the idea of hero worship quite well. And I think Chalamet is quite his character is quite interesting. Even though the film is maybe not, I agree, not very successful. I think part of the problem is the book. Am I right? The book takes place over decades, and it feels like the film takes place over an afternoon.
Yeah,
it's not,
it takes place over years, I think.
Yeah, because like there's a kid, like they cut out like, not to get into too deep, but there's a kid in it who's a big part of it. They cut out, and she gets to be about like a teenager, I think, in the book. But
she's still a child. Excuse me. She's still a child at the end of the book, but then I think in the sequels and that's Anya Taylor-Joy, who has that like 2-second cameo. But I think she is, which is why the film is so stupid, because you have like this 3-year-old child. But the book is also stupid in that way, because you have a 3-year-old child facing off against the emperor. It's just like bad. I think it's bad. Anyway, there we
go. Ellie, do you want to talk about a sequel that was actually good?
I mean, as I kind of said, I've not really been watching any sequels.
You did say that not 2 minutes ago. So let's move on to the next bit. Like, it's so well planned, this podcast. Anyway.
I don't suppose anybody's going to be watching that June series now. That was such a quick turnaround, by the way. I've seen posters in public for like a June series on, I think, Amazon Prime.
I've heard it's probably really bad.
Yeah, I would assume so. It's just like the first one came out and it seemed new, it seemed interesting. People liked it. I liked the first one. Then the second one came out and I didn't get around to seeing that, and I was already just inundated with posters for the extended universe spin-off material, and I was like, oh, I'm probably just not going to keep up with it then. I don't care that much.
It does have Samantha Morton in it, so it does have a thematic connection to something else we've been talking about. Ooh. It's called Dune Prophecy.
I'm just assuming that Wallace and Gromit is going to be great. That's my good sequel of 2024,
yeah,
even though I haven't
Ellie's
seen it yet.
5-star lock of the festive season is the new Wallace and Gromit. Will be good. It probably won't be sexy though, so we'll move on to the next thing.
I think that's Emily Watson, babe.
Oh no, you're right. It is Emily Watson.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, so get as good a time as any to move on, I think. Okay, big question next. Why were films so sexy in the year of 2024? We got a couple of things to talk about in this. One is a kind of award discussion for acting, and one is for just Sexy AF Film Award, it says on the notes. There were a lot of sexy films this year. Anahit Baruz, which one was the top of this section of films?
I mean, for me, it was Challenges.
Okay.
I would say. Big runner-up with Love Lies Bleeding. I think to answer the broader question, which is why were films so sexy in the year of our Lord 2024, I think his films were very gay in the year of our Lord 2024, and that is just sexier than heterosexuality, I would say.
Again, it's a fair cop.
Yeah.
She's got stuff.
I'm so sorry.
So Challenges, sexy. Love Lies Bleeding, also sexy. Two films that we talked about last time. Are there any films that we didn't talk about last time that were sexy? Ellie, you might have one based on the color coding of these notes.
Yes, I do. I'm fully in agreement with
It's so
Challengers.
well planned, this podcast.
I'm fully in agreement with Challengers and Love Lies Bleeding being like these big sexy films, and I thought they were very sexy and I really appreciate them. But I wanted to just talk about a film that we didn't get to talk about last episode. So I guess, like, you know, outside of the more popular ones, my like sexy moment in film of 2024 would probably be from Orlando, My Political Biography, which, you know, blending like meta-narrative and documentary, already very sexy. But the fact as well that it's just this kind of embodiment of like trans fantasies, and there's this one particular scene where they're all just like having this party where they're passing around drugs, and it's like, you know, HRT, which is just really, really fun. But also, yeah, that film is clearly just, you know, doing, I think that it really speaks to the trans experience, and that it tries a lot of stuff and a lot of stuff clashes and doesn't work, and everyone's cutting around in like, you know, tracky bottoms and also an Elizabethan ruff. But then I think that's kind of what's really charming about it. I think that if you were to watch it, you kind of like, you know, you'd pick out stuff that you'd like, and there's stuff that sticks with you. Nice.
Jamie, have you got one for us?
I can throw one in. Like, I agree with all those. Maybe I'd also throw in Queer, just because it's maybe not quite as sexy as Challengers, but Challengers actually really didn't have any sex in it. The sex is tennis, as Anahit explained in the last episode. So Queer just had some sort of pretty good sex scenes, and I think it was something about like these films. Like, when I think of sex in Hollywood, I think of it being quite polished, and it's all kind of like light through like Venetian blinds, and it's like kind of all kind of moody and like cheesy. But like all these films are kind of quite bodily and sweaty, and like I think that's why they're sexy. You know, think of like Challengers, all the sweat, and Love's Lies Bleedings, and you can see everybody's pores, and it's all a bit grotty, you know, like a lot of kind of saliva and stuff like that. So, in the similar way that with Queer, you know, that it's happening in these kind of grotty little rooms in New Mexico. So maybe that part of that is like a bit more kind of real. The sex is a bit more kind of like, you know, 'cause sex is kind of grotty and messy, and you know, I can't remember any fancy lighting when I've been doing it. So.
Shall we move on to the act?
No. Let's stay here. You can fix that, you know? That's an easy fix.
Next thing on the docket is the Josh O'Connor Award for being, as Jamie said, grotty, but kind of hot. We would say grotty, dangerously close to gritty, that kind of crazy ginger ice hockey mascot. And that's leading us in a very different direction. This isn't a furry podcast. This is a film podcast. So, who wants to go first? We're talking about a specific actor who was kind of gross, but could also get it. Ellie?
My picks aren't actors or films.
Excellent.
Would you like me to start?
No, because your picks are actors to their films. Again, it's so well planned. Anahit, go.
I would say Kristen Stewart in Love Lies Bleeding, with her disgusting little mullet and her disgusting little muscles and her disgusting little muscle tees. That was very sexy. I think Josh O'Connor sleeping in his car and then waking up to play some good fucking tennis was objectively very hot. Something I would definitely fall for. Who else? Yeah, Daniel Craig in Queer. I'm just like reading off the list, but yeah, these are all like really compelling arguments. Just a lot of people that were like disgusting but also pitiable, but somehow still very sexy for it. You know what I mean?
If there's two things that Anahit wants in a partner, it's someone who you can be like, ugh, but also say like,
aw. Yeah, that's the dream. Yeah, I would say this was the year for that.
Wonderful. Jamie, have you got anything to add to that? Which of the two Josh O'Connors, Challengers or Lacrimera, do we think is the best? Is the hottie grotty?
What's the grottiest and what's the sexiest? Well, I think in
both
both
the combo. You know, on those graphs that you get, it's like the political compass of Josh O'Connor. It's like the bottom left quadrant would be like extremely grotty but not hot.
I think there's something about like in both you can tell he smells a bit. Like in the first one, he's came from prison. He's wearing the suit he's been wearing forever. You know, he grows a beard. There's not like good plumbing where they're living. You know, he's not bathing a lot. And then, as you said, in Challengers, he's living out his car. I love in Challengers. I think it's a joke where like art is always like will both of them change their tops or take their tops off at halftime. Not halftime. What do you call it? Between sets in tennis. I forgot what sport
During
they're playing.
intermission.
Yeah. So between sets, they'll take off their tops because they're really sweaty. But because art's sponsored by like Uniqlo, he's got like 20 tops, and he just changes back into like a fresh, perfect tee. And then like Josh O'Connor has to put on his the same sort of sweaty wife beater he's wearing. So like. That's just like funny to me. Like it's just like he can't afford a second shirt, and he has the same shirt, and it must be so stinky and sweaty throughout the thing. But it's also very sexy. But then ironically, the sexiest moment in the film is when they're bathing in a kind of sauna. So maybe that's also says something. I don't know. And there's also a moment where Josh O'Connor bathes in Lucky Mary, where he has like a stand-up bath. So maybe the key to sexiness is they have to be really dirty and sexy, but you know they are going to get cleaned up. Does that make sense?
So it's not like
optimism.
It's optimism. I think it's not.
They're really dirty, but they have access to soap.
Yeah, I can fix it. POV, you're a bath. Good gravy.
Yeah, like I did not nominate any actors for the Josh O'Connor Award for being grotty but kind of hot, but I did just want to use this space to celebrate the fact that like cinema is kind of gross right now. Like this has been a really like gross, icky, disgusting year, which I love. I love, like you say, like sex scenes, but cinema in general, like a lot can get sanitized and a lot can be made into like audience-friendly filters and stuff like that. So I really like it when films, there is something like visceral and fucked up about them. And I feel like this year has been particularly good for weird little perverted directors, not just in terms of stuff like Challengers and Love Lies Bleeding, which are my top picks of this particular subgenre, but also like Poor Things came out at the beginning of the year, and that like has some really like obscenities in it. I really liked The Substance for that reason as well. I liked that The Substance like was doing body horror so well. And I'd also like to shout out Horde, which we talked about earlier in the year, just for being, I think out of all these films, the one that literally got the most like visceral reaction from me. Like I can't exactly remember what it was. I think that I remember it being some kind of open wound and garbage, which is sort of what that film is all about. But yeah, that was a squealing moment for me, which doesn't happen often.
Yeah, Horde, I would say Horde took it too far. You were concerned. Like, you never think Josh O'Connor's going to go too long without a bath. He's a film star. Of course he's going to bathe. Anyway, let's talk about music, because music is an important part of cinema. Anyway,
How long have we been recording?
We've been recording for 56 minutes. Right, so shall we do... We've got 2 bits we can go into on this one. We'll do Needle Drop second. First, we'll do some topical humour for the Cineskinny podcast. We're talking about really holding space for songs, because it turns out we're in queer media as well. I think actually, like, let's just talk about like songs or musical moments of the year that we have enjoyed. I'll throw in a few at the start. When Space Lab by Kraftwerk randomly shows up about a third of the way through La Chimera, like the full song as just like a completely anachronistic overdub, that's excellent. There's a really good Joanna Sternberg song at the end of Between the Temples, a Jason Schwartzman film, where I repeatedly got Jason Schwartzman's female co-star wrong and had to be shouted at by the members of this podcast. 2 very good examples of techno, of course, Challengers, Atticus Ross, and Trent Reznor score, but also the moment in The Outrun, the Saoirse Ronan film, where Simian Mobile Disco just starts playing at full blast, and it's fantastic. Is when she's walking walking then down by the beach, and she's got her headphones on, and it's just absolutely bumping that, to quote Charlie XCX. Bumping that. bumping that, and so on and so forth. So, musical moments. Anahit's got a mic in her hand. She's also writing a text message.
No, I'm not. I'm buying a cinema ticket, actually. I think you'll find, which is very on brand.
You're going to see Sonic the Hedgehog then?
Yes. Yeah. You've convinced me. I need to find out what that other hedgehog was.
I didn't know they were still doing. I didn't know they were still doing screenings of Madam Web at the cinema. Right, we'll come to Ellie first. Music.
Hey,
oh no, Anahit's done. Sorry. Again, it's so well planned. Annie, go.
My 2 favourites. So for the Really Holding Space for the Song Award, we're in queer media. I put the like remix / just, is it just the actual song, but just like fucked up a little bit, of Small Town Boy on the Love Lies Bleeding trailer. I don't think it was in the actual film, as far as I can remember, but that trailer moment was really like so deeply gay and so good. And then Needle Drop of the Year, where I like my jaw dropped in the cinema was when they do Come As You Are by Nirvana in Queer. And it's when he first sees Drew Starkey's character and he just becomes like mesmerized. And then you fucking have Nirvana playing in the background. It's so fucking good. So those two, I would say, were like, oh, and then also Power of Love in All of Us Strangers, which ruined my life. I would say that's the three.
that was a very emotional moment. I thought that Claire Foy singing "Always on My Mind" by the Pet Shop Boys
that
at
was also
Christmas was
lovely.
actually, that was more kind of like, oh.
Yeah, that was also beautiful.
That was me simulating crying. I wasn't being like, possessed by a ghost. Ellie, would you be ironically a good fit for All of Us Strangers? Ellie, what have you got for us?
So I guess if I had to pick a musical moment of the year, all the ones that said there, I really loved as well. Loved Nirvana in Queer. Loved the soundtrack to Challengers. But the only thing that I don't think I see written down here already is essentially the entire soundtrack of Perfect Days, which is like, I think I said on the last episode how Perfect Days is this film about like, emotions or whatever, like how, every life is a special story of its own. But at the same time, it is a film about how fucking good it is to listen to music and just how amazing it is to just listen to music when you're on your way somewhere, how much music can just change a day. If you just listen to good music, that's all you really need. It has like features from Patti Smith and Nina Simone. I think the first one is like The Animals, House of the Rising Sun. Just all these like really great moments that show just how well you can kind of reframe something that you're filming simply through the use of score.
Excellent. Jamie, what have you got for us in the milieu of music? Brackets film.
The song that I've been singing to myself so much around the kitchen is "Pump It Up." Is it Indoor? The one, the song that's Margot Qualley. She makes this, her character in The Substance, I think Sue is her name. She does this kind of ridiculous dance, like aerobic exercise too. It's like really sexed up. It's really over the top. Her ass is in your face constantly, but the song is just like so repetitive and like so catchy. Also, shout out to Anora for making me like Take That. Like, and not even like Take That when they're fun. It's the late career Take That after Robbie Williams left. Like that is it The Greatest Day. Like that song has been in my head constantly. Like some on rotation on Spotify. Yeah, and sometimes that just shows you like a song that I would have no interest in if it came on the radio. Somehow, when a filmmaker puts it to work in a movie, like against an image, it kind of somehow changes it and makes it different. So yeah, I think if you have the right song and the right image, it can be kind of some sort of alchemy, and it kind of works. And that song, yeah, I now associate that totally with Anora, and it cheers me up when I hear it.
You know what that is? That's cinema, baby. The alchemy of the image and sound working together. Shall we discuss acting? Or shall we do the random fun awards?
Yeah, I think random fun. We can just like say that people are good at acting.
Yeah, should we just say that for people who are good at acting?
Yeah.
Should we get some very quick shout outs so then we can do the random fun ones to finish? Talia Ryder. Talia Ryder was good in The Sweet East. You're right, Ellie.
Yeah. Just in terms
of... A weird film that resulted in, as I was listening back to some episodes of the podcast the other day, resulted in some of the strangest. We got really driven down some rabbit holes by the film The Sweet East. Go back and listen to that. I feel like some of them are borderline libelous and unrepeatable. But the thing is, they're still on the internet, so fuck it. Yeah. And also, you want to shout out Dev Patel for Monkey Man.
Yeah, Monkey Man was just a really fun film. Like, it wasn't the most sort of like brainy film, and it was a little bit like, I don't know, just really over the top, but it was just a good directorial debut from Dev Patel. It works really well with him. Like, these really intense fight scenes where he's like chucking people over tables and stuff like that, but the camera work is really fluid. It's like very, I don't know, like very aerobic. So if you're an action film fan, go see find out where Monkey Man is.
Nice. Schwartzman, Jamie, had a good year, didn't he? He's having a nice time.
Yes, I'm giving Jason Schwartzman the moving into middle phase of your career award. Because I thought he's an actor I liked a lot, but he has played a kind of similar character throughout his whole career. This kind of boyish charlatan essentially. But he's so good in a couple of films this year. So he's I think we talked about him a lot in Between the Temples, where he plays this rabbi who's having a kind of crisis of faith, and he has this kind of lovely kind of Harold and Maude-esque relationship with Carol Kane. I was going to get her name wrong there. I was going to call it. That's you, Peter.
See, it's not that easy, is it?
That was just a really funny, sweet film, but he's like quite spiky in it still. He's got a kind of real kind of like boyish, he's got that kind of weird kind of, he's an older man who has a boyish kind of quality to him, and that's why he works so well in that film. And then he's so good in Queer, where he plays this kind of like, he's just one of the barflies at one of the bars that Daniel Craig's character frequents. And yeah, he's just hilarious. He's this very funny, very kind of gossipy guy who's like observing always a bit the chorus, who's like sort of like the sounding board for Lee, who's Daniel Craig's character. But yeah, just like every time he come on screen, I enjoyed him, and yeah, he's very funny.
Nice. Anahit, you got any particular actors you want to give a shout out to? Nope, Anahit doesn't. I just want actually to give a shout out to the boys from Kneecap, in particular JJ O'Doherty, DJ Proby, because they were genuinely, he was such a good actor that I was surprised that he was not a professional actor in Kneecap, opposite, like, imagine being like, we're musicians and we're going to act as ourselves in a film about our lives, opposite Fassbender, and it doesn't turn into a shambles. What a result. Big up the lads. And then they absolutely stuck it to the British government. So, you know, good lads.
Yeah.
The old Kneecap boys, a lovely bunch of lads. And then to round things off, some fun ones. At the end, it's double fun. At the end of the fun episode, some fun awards. These are all extremely hyper-specific to things that we have particularly enjoyed that work just entirely out of context. Ideal for clipping, for trying to share the podcast on social media. That's your goal. Be edgy, be exciting, and get it in and out in 45 seconds or less. Don't you laugh at that. Jamie, you wanted to talk about municipal meetings on screen, I believe.
Yes. Well, there's a great one in Evil Does Not Exist. And this is like an example of a filmmaker who has constantly surprised me in this movie. So like a couple of big shots from the city slickers come to town and sort of want to propose that they're going to turn this beautiful kind of like village into like have a glamping site attached to it. And it's obviously the villagers, they think they're going to just like charm them, and the villagers obviously hate it, and they just like barrage these two people who are completely at their depth. It's very funny, and you think you're meant to hate these people and they're going to leave, but actually the film actually becomes about them in a way, and that's what's interesting with the film. These people who you're set up to hate and think are morons, actually you start to sympathise with them. So, but it's also one of the funniest scenes of the year. And you know, if you've been in any kind of like council meeting where you've seen like the small folk have a bit of a victory, I was like punching the air with joy. So that was fun. And then there's a similar scene a little bit in Dahomey, which is, I don't know if you were around, I think it was just Ellie and I who discussed it, but it's a really great film, a documentary, very poetic and sort of dreamlike, you know, kind of very observational. And then just suddenly it becomes this town hall meeting between like a bunch of university students arguing about the rights or wrongs of reparations. It's about Dahomey, which is now the Kingdom of Benin, which are getting sort of back like a whole load of treasures from France. And it's just like maybe 20-30 minutes of the kids, and they're like 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds chatting about the rights and wrongs of this. It's just really lively, really well edited, and on paper should be really boring, but it's just like put together in such an interesting way, and the arguments are so compelling on both sides. Yeah, like a really startling scene and a really great film.
Nice. Ellie, I'll come to you shortly, but I wanted to quickly shout out the biggest... So on this podcast, we love a jarring shift in tone or a really unexpected kind of double whammy of things. And I think the best one occurred film adjacent this year, which was Bad Bunny and The Rock doing a skit to introduce the Best International Feature Award nominees and then giving the award to Jonathan Glazer for The Zone of Interest, which I was like, this was like watching an Adam Curtis documentary being made in real time. You know, when you sometimes genuinely can't believe what you're seeing, because they come out and they do a bit of kind of like English and Spanish back and forth. Oh, you're not such a bad bunny after all. Anyway, here's Jonathan Glazer to accept this award. Oh, sometimes
That's such a bad bunny after all. That's such a funny sentence.
Sometimes, why do you need You know what? Maybe the studio's right. Why do you need writers sometimes? Sometimes life finds a way. Ellie, do you have a particular obscure bit of film ephemera you'd like to award from this year?
Yeah, I guess we've got a little thing here that said, I can't stop thinking about this ending award. And just in one last shout out to Animated Films of the Year, I guess I saw Look Back, which is an anime film that, did it premiere at Scotland Loves Anime in Scotland? Either way, now you can see it on Amazon Prime Video, I think. But it's just a really like sweet film about a sort of high school girl who writes for her high school newspaper's like manga column. But when a like homeschooled child starts submitting much better art, she like becomes hyper competitive and is determined to like, you know, supersede her peer that she's never actually met. But then I don't know, like it just, yeah, like what it is really about is childhood, and the kind of like enormity of that doesn't really like come in until the last very sort of magical realist twist ending of the film. So it's also a very short film. So if you do want to check it out, I do recommend Look Back for a kind of like glowing and well-received animated film of 2024.
Excellent. Keep watching it to the end, because the end is very good. Anahit, do you have anything, much like this podcast, it's so well planned. Anahit, do you have a particular piece of film esoterra that you'd like to award from this year?
No, not really.
Okay.
I liked, it was a good year. I don't know, I'm trying to think about, I think we've like covered everything.
Excellent. There's one thing that I would like to talk about. And
I think you have something that you really want to talk about.
Right, Lindsay Lohan.
Yeah, there we go.
And the weird thing is, I've been on a journey with this since I wrote this down. So, Falling for Christmas came out last year. Falling for Christmas is the kind of amnesiac skiing Christmas film where her partner, who she's going to get engaged to, disappears off down the mountain and gets rescued by a mountain man. It looks like it was shot in about 20 minutes. They used the same drone shot 3 or 4 times, like identical shot. It's not very good, but that's that. It's Christmas. Sometimes you watch crap at Christmas. It's fine. Irish Wish came out this year for St. Patrick's Day, and I swear to Christ, this is the Fool Me Once award, right? Irish Wish is the worst film I saw all year, and it wasn't even close. I've seen Hallmark Christmas films. I watched the first 20 minutes of Madam Web on a train in Spain, and Irish Wish is the biggest pile of shit I've seen. It's so bad. It's borderline offensive. I mean, it's not borderline offensive. The problem is, if they actually wanted to have it be that she is like entranced by a magical leprechaun and then gets her Irish wish to kind of Freaky Friday-esque body swap with her friend, then that would be fine. But it's as if Netflix didn't want to have it actually be a leprechaun, so it's made it some woman in a hat. And I'm like, have the courage of your convictions, for God's sake. Make it a leprechaun.
Would they? Do you think that would be a less offensive?
Yes, I think
portrayal?
I think lean into it. I think it reeks of like corporate oversight for someone to be like, oh, we'll make an Irish inspired. I'm doing massive air quotes here. Irish inspired romantic comedy with Lindsay Lohan, but we'll not put a leprechaun in it because that would be too much.
So, do you know how you call this the Film Me Once award? Did you not just say you watched the Lindsay Lohan film at the weekend?
Well, that's the twist ending, you see, Jamie. That's why it's at the end of the podcast. It's so well planned. Anyway, so then I watched so I thought, right, fool me once, and so on. You know how the expression goes, fool me once, you can't get fooled again. George Bush, 2000 and so on. And then at the weekend, I watched Our Little Secret, which is Lindsay Lohan's latest seasonal, so basically she's under contract with Netflix to produce as many different seasonal romantic comedies as it's possible to create, and only once the curse is lifted will she be allowed to leave. So she produces this new Christmas one. She, at the very start, it's 2014, she is with the guy from Pretty Little Liars with the giant creepy eyes. She is going to London to get a new job. He takes this very badly. They have a big falling out. She goes to London. You then get the most psychotic opening sequence that I can possibly think of. It is a Getty Images heavy montage of things that happened between 2014 and 2024. The film is set at Christmas. The opening vignette is set at Christmas, and the whole premise of the film is that it's a Christmas film, and the soundtrack is Summer by Calvin Harris. This is unacceptable to me. I cannot believe this is happening. So at this point, I'm thinking this is going to be a disaster. I've been duped into watching my third Lindsay Lohan film of the year. How has this been allowed to happen? But actually, what I will say, as potentially the final word from the Cineskinny podcast in 2024, that Our Little Secret is actually fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's quite competently made. It's got a reasonable cast of people who are good at acting. It moves along at a fair old clip. It was directed by the guy who did The Mighty Ducks and 101 Dalmatians, and one of the Bill and Ted's.
The good one?
One of the good ones. I believe it's Excellent Adventure.
Okay.
So yeah, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's not going to blow you away. There's some scenes where Lindsay Lohan does lots of drug gummies and then sings in a church. There is, of course, some level of romantic rekindling with the man with creepy eyes. The man with creepy eyes is fantastic because he is incapable of closing his eyes any more than being... They can either be fully open or fully shut. So you'll see... And he just always seems furious. This is the thing. This is the guy from Pretty Little Liars who is the creep. There was a word that was used to describe him in the office that I feel like legally I probably can't say. But... Just imagine what that word would be and place it in this gap that I'll leave you here. There we go. So yeah, that is Lindsay Lohan. She had me in the first half, not going to lie. But
Are we going to end the podcast with a 5-minute rant about Lindsay Lohan? This is a very weird way to end our podcast. I'm very confused.
It is a very weird way to end the podcast, but as we've discussed throughout, Jamie, this has been very well planned.
I feel like it's weird we've talked about 3 Lindsay Lohan films and not talked about, I don't know, Northern or like, you know, what else is The Beast, all these amazing films and shit. But anyway, there you go.
It's weird how these things work out sometimes.
We're actually re-recording that last episode. We're going to put our little secret in number 1.
Yes. I mean, by no means is this the best film of the year. It just made me not want to go to the Netflix offices and throw bricks at their windows.
Would you say maybe it's the film that surprised you the most this year?
I think it was starting from such a low point. I don't think it was the film that surprised me the most, but it certainly made me... it showed me that all things can be redeemed. It showed me that nothing in this life is ever hopeless.
Oh, that's the spirit of Christmas. That's a great place to end
it also set me up for the inevitable fall when the Lindsay Lohan Easter romantic comedy comes out.
Yeah, you've now bought in.
Yeah. Was it Fool Me Once, Twice, 3 times?
Yeah, and keep going.
And so on and so forth. Right. Unless there's anything else, I think that is actually how we're going to end the Cineskinny podcast for 2024. Jamie looks furious. But he also looks kind of punch drunk. I think we're going to get away with it. So thank you, Ellie.
Thank you.
If I just start thanking people and then turn off the mics, then I win. Thank you, Anahit.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jamie Dunn, film editor of the magazine.
Thank you.
We will be back in 2025. Do we want to tell them about this project that we had, this little thing that we have in January? Can we tell them about that?
I believe it's going to be going online on Wednesday.
This Wednesday?
Not tomorrow, but a week on Wednesday.
Okay. Keep an eye on the Cineskinny socials for a very exciting announcement from the gang. It is very exciting. Anahit in particular is very excited about it.
And we could say keep the 26th of January free.
Yes. Keep the 26th of January free. And if you're in Glasgow already, stay there. Don't go elsewhere. This has been the Cineskinny podcast. Thank you all for listening this year. It's been lovely. We'll be back in 2025. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Good job, everybody.
Great.
Just as well I've been recording on here.
I was about to...